Hello everyone, my name is Livia Gerber. I am a postdoc at UNSW. In this case study, I will talk about how social and genetic relationships influence cooperation in male bottlenose dolphins. First, I would like to talk about why cooperation is important and how is cooperation actually defined. Cooperation is an interaction that benefits the recipient, but not necessarily the actor performing a cooperative act. It's a highly abundant phenomenon that can be observed on all levels of biological organizations. We observe cooperation between organelles within a cell, and cooperation can also be seen between cells or then of individuals of either the same or different species. There are various explanations for cooperations, either on the level of increasing direct fitness benefits or indirect fitness benefits. On the level of direct fitness benefits, there is, for example, byproduct mutualism, which explains cooperation as a byproduct of a selfish behavior, for example, cooperative hunting. So each individual that engages in cooperative hunting does so because it is interested in getting the prey and feeding itself. Very similar is pseudo-reciprocity, which explains cooperation as a byproduct of a selfish behavior, and it involves an initial investment. An example for that is the group feeding calls in swallows that feed on insect swarms that are very hard to trace. So an individual that comes across such an insect swarm emits a food call, thereby attracts other swallows. And by having multiple swallows feeding on that same insect swarm, the insect swarm is much easier to track, and each individual gets to feed more than when it would be doing so by itself. Reciprocity is a time-lagged exchange of cooperative or beneficial behavior. We see that in vampire bats, where if one vampire bat has not been successful during a night of hunting, is being donated blood by an individual that was successfully hunting, and then at a later point in time, these behaviors are being exchanged. There's also ultimate explanations for cooperation that involve an increase in indirect fitness benefits. So indirect fitness benefits are such that do not necessarily increase the fitness of an individual itself, but it can still pass on its genes indirectly through a relative that then has higher fitness benefits. So we have, for example, or what we mainly think about when we talk about indirect fitness benefit is kin selection, which are selfless acts among relatives. So because relatives share genes, and it increases fitness when you pass on your genes to the next generation. So if you help your relative to reproduce, then even though you don't sire an offspring yourself, your genes are still passed on indirectly through that relative. And it is said that the more closer related you are, the more likely you are to cooperate with someone. Another explanation that is on the level of indirect fitness benefits is the green beard effect, which is cooperation based on a cooperative gene that involves the expression of a specific trait. So for example, a green beard, and then individuals recognize all of the other carriers of such a gene and cooperate with them. So all of the individuals having such a green beard would then be cooperating with each other, excluding others that don't have such a green beard from cooperation. Kin selection is the most abundantly found phenomenon that can actually explain cooperation. So mostly when we see cooperation, it does occur among relatives. When it comes to male cooperation that is seen as somewhat of a conundrum. This is because sexual selection states that males are in competition with each other because they are limited in their reproductive success and thereby their fitness through the access or by the access of females. So it is very rare that we see males actually cooperating rather than competing with each other. However, in some cases, we see males cooperating with each other to secure access to females. And this is because very often two males can outcompete a single other one. Because fertilizations are indivisible, not all of the males cooperating can actually sire offspring. And this is why very often we see related males cooperating, because even though if they don't sire the offspring themselves, but their relatives, they can still pass on their genes indirectly to the next generation. Or in some cases, such as in mannequin birds, there's also delayed fitness benefits, where only the alpha male sires all of the offspring, but the longer a male keeps cooperating in the same group, they rise up in the dominance hierarchy and thereby increase their chances of becoming dominant themselves and siring offspring. We differentiate between coalitions and alliances when we talk about male cooperation. Coalitions are where we simply see multiple males cooperating against other ones. So this involves two males that then team up against, for example, a single other one. Alliances are recurring coalitions among the same males. And this is thought to be one of the most complex social systems, because if you are part of an alliance, you need to know who are your own allies, who are your opponent's allies, and you also need to estimate a little bit like what are your chances of actually outcompeting them. One of the most famous alliance system in males can be observed in the bottlenose dolphins in Shark Bay. Shark Bay is located in WA, Western Australia, approximately 1,000 kilometers north of Perth. There are an Eastern and Western Gulf, and the data that I'm presenting here are coming from the Western Gulf, where dolphins have been studied since the mid-80s, so more than 30 years. Genetic samples on this population have been collected since 1997, making it one of the most studied wild cetacean populations in the world. Before I dive into explaining the alliance system in bottlenose dolphins in Shark Bay, I would like to provide a little bit more behind the scenes insight in how we collect behavioral data. We collect behavioral data based on 5-minute surveys. So in the morning, we go onto the boat, we scan the water and look for dolphins. As soon as we see either a single dolphin or a group of them, we approach these dolphins and we spend 5 minutes with them, where we record the main group activity, the GPS location, but also the individuals that we see. Often we're getting asked, how do we recognize individual dolphins? Well, they don't really have such distinct faces, but they have very distinct dorsal fins. We have a catalog with more than 1,000 individuals. And so if we don't recognize a dolphin right away because it has a very unique dorsal fin, we then go back home, look at the pictures that we took of the group and scan through the catalog until we find the dolphin that was present in the group. Associations are very important, and they are based on the 10-meter chain rule, which means that any dolphin that's within 10 meters of another one are considered to be in the same group. And it's very important to identify social partners and also to quantify social bond strength among individuals. We quantify social bond strength using the simple ratio index, which is an index ranging from 0 to 1. 0 means that two individuals have never been observed in the same group, and 1 means that the dolphins have never been observed apart. The formula for this is the number of sightings where both dolphins have been seen divided by the number of times each dolphin has been seen on its own. Now to the very complex multi-level alliance system in Shark Bay, where male dolphins cooperate in nested alliances over the access to females. We speak of second order alliances, which is the core social unit in Shark Bay, and they can actually last for multiple decades. So these second order alliances consist of 4 to 14 male dolphins. Within these alliances, 2 to 3 males form what we call first order alliances, in which they cooperate to mate with a female. And these matings are called consortships. And while the second order alliances are highly stable, first order alliances vary in composition. So for example, we see here these 3 males belonging to the same second order alliance in a consortship of this gray female. But then if we see the next consortship of the same male, that was this one here, cooperating with these 2 in the last consortship, he chooses 2 other members to consort the blue female in another consortship. So for all of these first order alliances, they're always formed within second order alliances. And while some males form very various first order alliances, others are much more choosy and kind of always choose the same set of males to form a first order alliance. Within second and first order alliances, we think that there is no strict dominance hierarchy, which opposes many other alliance systems. And all first order allies are presumed to mate with their consort, which would make it highly likely that these alliances or these first order alliances are formed among relatives, because if you share matings, then only one of the males can successfully sire the offspring. So it would make sense that if you don't sire the offspring yourself, then at least you work together with your brothers, so that you still get indirect fitness benefits in case you don't sire an offspring by yourself. Both the first and the second order alliance serve the purpose to defend females. Females are a highly contested resource in Shark Bay. This is because every female gives birth to a single calf about every 4 years. There's no paternal care at all. So that also means that every female is only ready to mate again every 4 years. And because there is no paternal care, there's a much larger number of males that are ready to mate compared to females. So females are defended on both alliance levels. So here we have the same alliance belonging to the blue second order alliance that are currently consorting the single female. They are then being attacked by these 3 green males that belong to another second order alliance. So what can these blue guys do? They ask for help of their second order alliance, which is then also what the other ones can do. So sometimes we observe a large pod of dolphins, maybe 20 males that are all competing over a single female. The alliance system in Shark Bay is highly complex, not only because it involves multiple levels, it also occurs in an open fission fusion society. Now, what does this mean? This means that there are overlapping home ranges and the groups are much more fluid. So there is no territory. Multiple second order alliances overlap with various female home ranges. And there is no very clear set groups. So we see like some members of like a specific alliance together, and then they kind of mix. So the groups are not very stable, even though the second order alliances themselves, they are highly stable. So they kind of just meet, go away a little bit, and then meet again. I very often also compare the male alliances to soccer teams. So you have your very set soccer team that are competing against each other. And then, but within these teams, maybe some team members have best friends, so they kind of then group and then regroup again with their larger team. What is very unique in Shark Bay is that we have bisexual philopatry. So that means that both males and females remain in their natal home ranges, so the area where they have been born. This permits both males and females to form persisting social bonds, which is rare because in most mammal species, males leave their natal range and go to another territory to limit inbreeding. And here in Shark Bay, it's one of the only cases where you actually know that males stay in their home range, so they have the possibility to forge these lifelong friendships, which is also possible for females. Females mostly affiliate with same-sex relatives, very often the ones that are in a similar reproductive condition. So female relatives with calf tend to hang out together, while females that don't have calves also affiliate with each other. And in general, females also do have social bonds, but they are not these very strong bonds that we observe in the male dolphins. Alliance formation is crucial for bottlenose dolphins in Shark Bay because non-allied males sire very little to no offspring at all. So what I was then wondering was whether male cooperation in bottlenose dolphins is kin biased or not. Before I introduce you to my results a little bit, here are some of the important stages in a male dolphin's life and what we knew until I have carried out my study. So dolphins spent their first 4 years as a dependent calf with their mom, and already as calves, we observed that males have stronger bonds compared to female calves, and that they prefer to associate with other males and not to females. So already there, males seem to have this preference to form strong same-sex bonds. Then a male spends its next 4 years as a juvenile, when it's between 4 to 8 years old. It's then independent from its mom. Also, then males continue to be actually more social compared to females, and they have a preference for same-sex relatives, which is exactly what we would actually expect based on kin selection. The next 6 years are spent as an adolescent. By then, males are sexually mature, but they are not yet a member of an alliance, so they cannot really compete with other males, and they don't sire offspring yet. In that age span, we didn't know partner preferences the same as once they were adult. Adulthood is once males reach 15 years of age. By then they have established their second order alliance membership, which means that they are not only sexually but also socially mature. Being a member of an alliance then enables males to compete with others successfully over access to females, so they can engage in courtships and also start siring offspring. So what I was interested in was partner preferences in adolescence and also adulthood, particularly whether, as we would expect from the predictions of kin selection, whether these partner preferences can be explained by relatedness or not. So I looked at these two age stages in particular when I was looking at who is chosen as a partner on the second order alliance level and also on the first order alliance level. First, I would like to present the results on the second order alliance member choice. For this, I looked at 25 individual male dolphins, from which I knew their chosen second order alliance partners once they were adult, which was for each focal male on average 10. But I also needed to know not only who was chosen, but also who was not chosen. And for this, I looked at their potential partner during adolescence when they form their second order alliances. So how did I choose potential but non-chosen second order alliance partners when they were adolescent? So for each focal male, I looked at who was around, so who could they have chosen, but then I excluded all of the males that were too young to be chosen as an ally. I also excluded all males that disappeared during a focal male's transition from adolescence into adulthood. And because a male can only form an alliance with a male that it knows of its existence, I excluded all males that were outside the focal male's home range. On average, each male then had 54 potential but non-chosen males that he could have formed a second order alliance with, but did not. I was then looking at individual level differences between each focal male set of chosen second order alliance partners and potential but non-chosen ones. And I looked at their differences in particular for like social bond strength during adolescence, because I was wondering whether males that had a particularly strong social bond during adolescence became second order alliance members in adulthood. I looked at the age difference to investigate whether males, for example, prefer older and more experienced, probably also stronger males as second order alliance members, and to investigate the influence of kin selection on second order alliance member choice, I looked at their relatedness. I then found that relatedness and also age difference did not influence second order alliance member choice, but social bond strength during adolescence did. So males that had a strong social bond during adolescence were more likely to be alliance members in adulthood compared to males that had a very weak social bond when they were adolescent. This can also be seen on this graph here. Here we have social bond strength from adolescence with 0 indicating that there is a very weak social bond, and the higher this value is, the higher the social bond was during adolescence. Here on the y-axis, we see the likelihood that two males end up in the same second order alliance. And we see that the stronger the social bond was during adolescence, the more likely they were to become alliance partners in adulthood. There was also an influence of age, namely that males were more likely to choose an older individual already when they did not share a particularly strong social bond in adolescence as an alliance partner compared to a younger one. So if a male was younger than the focal male, they needed to have a particularly strong social bond to be chosen as second order alliance members. This might, for example, be because younger males are generally less experienced and also potentially not as strong, thereby they might not be as good cooperators in a competitive context. So they needed to have a particularly strong social bond to actually be chosen. Now that we know that second order alliances are not based on relatedness, I was then wondering that, well, in second order alliances, males do not really share matings. That's what actually happens in first order alliances. So what if it doesn't really matter who your team members are in the second order alliance, but you want to team up with relatives for when you form first order alliances, because your first order alliance partners are the ones that you share a mating with and where it would actually make sense to team up with your relatives. So for that, I looked at 53 individual focal males, which were members of 6 second order alliances. On average, each of these 53 males had 11 second order alliance members. I also then, very similar to the last analysis, looked at individual level differences between preferred and avoided first partners with regard to their social bond strength in the non-mating season, age difference, and again, relatedness. And what surprised me was that males formed first order alliances with the second order alliance members they associate with in the mating season, but it occurred independent of relatedness. So there was no influence of kin selection or relatedness on both first order and second order alliance member choice, but social bonds seem to have a very strong influence. So because relatives are not preferred allies on both levels of alliance formation, I conclude that kin selection does not explain cooperation in male bottlenose dolphins, but because social bond strength predicts first as well as second order alliance partner choice, it seems that male dolphins already invest into their future partners before cooperation actually occurs. So for first order partner choice, it seems that it depends on who you socialize with in the non-mating season, and then you mate with, or you form first order alliances and you share matings with these males that you have particularly strong social bonds. And the same is true for second order alliance formation. You socialize during adolescence with your second order alliance members in adulthood. So it seems that there is a big investment into future partners and that social bonds seem to be highly valuable for male bottlenose dolphins. And I was then wondering, well, since there is no indirect fitness benefits involved in cooperation in bottlenose dolphins, maybe there is an adaptive value of social bonds that increases dolphins' direct fitness. An influence of social bonds on fitness is observed in various species, and very often in primates it can be observed that social bonds positively influence female fitness. For example, it increases a female's reproductive output, or that females that have particularly strong social networks have a higher offspring survival and also increased levels of longevity. Research on how social bonds influence fitness is mainly carried out in females, and this has various reasons. First of all, in most species, females are the philopatric species, so females are the only sex that actually has the opportunity to form these long-lasting social bonds. And in addition, if we want to measure reproductive success in females, we can very often do that from pure behavioral data, because in most mammals we have some form of maternal care. But if we want to investigate reproductive fitness for a male, this very often involves genetic methods. However, in cases where fitness benefits have been investigated with regard to social bonds in males, it has been shown that also males do benefit from having social bonds. This can be observed in, for example, Assamese macaques, where males that have particularly strong and also more social partners, they have a higher chance to become dominant. And because dominant male sires most offspring, it pays out to have a lot of social bonds, and it can also be observed in chimpanzees. So I was then wondering, well, who is the most successful male in terms of number of paternities in second order alliances? I measured success as its direct fitness, so as the number of paternity of each male, and that it is for 85 males which were distributed over 10 second order alliances. Because I was interested whether social bonds have an influence on paternity success, I looked at 3 different social variables, the first of them being a first order alliance stability, which can also be referred to as partner fidelity. So whether a male always forms a first order alliance with the same set of males from its second order alliance, or whether maybe a male has more changing partners, so whether it kind of does not have highly preferred first order alliance partners, but seems to choose first order alliance partners more at random from its second order alliance. I then looked at node strength, which is the sum of the strength of social bond of a focal male to all of its second order alliance members. So for example, we see this male here, which has a very strong male, a very strong social bond to this male here, a weaker one to that one here, which is indicated by a thinner line compared to the thick one here. And then it's pretty much like the sum of each of these social bonds, which is then resulting in node strength. However, node strength does not really entail any information on whether a male has one very strong social bond and very weak ones, or whether the social bonds are more equally distributed. And that's why I calculated the coefficient of variation in social bond strength. So for example, this also has a value from 0 to 1. A value of 0 indicates that males don't really have strong partner preferences, which means a value of 1, instead a male has, like, for example, one very strong social bond, but then that the other social bonds it has are more weak. I also included 2 non-social variables, which are the average age difference to second order alliance members of a male. It is in some species the case that the oldest male sires most offspring because it has the most experience, might also be the strongest one. And I also looked at each male's home range size, simply because if a male has a particularly large home range, it is more likely to encounter more reproductive females and might therefore have the highest reproductive success. I then found that none of the non-social variables, but 2 of the social variables could explain or correlated with reproductive success, namely node strength and also the coefficient of variation in social bond strength. We see this on this graph here. So on the y-axis, we have the number of paternities, and here we have node strength. So a male that has overall stronger social bonds to its allies, sires, more offspring compared to a male that has fewer social bonds. And then also here we have the coefficient of variation. And we see that males that have a low coefficient of variation have a higher reproductive success compared to males that have a high coefficient of variation, which means that males that have equally strong social bonds to all of their allies have a higher number of offspring compared to males that have high partner preferences or very strong partner preferences. So from this, we can conclude that social bonds to second-order alliance members increase paternity success, and thereby social bonds have a direct influence on fitness. Cooperation in bottlenose dolphins does not necessarily involve relatives. In some cases, there might be the odd relative, but that in that system, it seems that cooperation with unrelated but close social partners might be more beneficial than cooperation with relatives. So if you cooperate with close social partners, you increase your direct fitness much more than maybe you could gain indirect fitness benefits from cooperating with your relatives. In many species that live in complex societies, social bonds are known to increase cooperative success, but this is also the case in lots of other species. Very often social bonds or just being familiar with an individual increases, for example, coordination, which could also be why dolphins prefer to cooperate with their social partners, because in these consortships, especially when the female tries to escape, the males have to locate themselves around the female and keep her from escaping. And if you actually know how to coordinate, or if the males know better how to coordinate, then this is making it much harder for a female to escape. It is also known that social partners are often preferred to cooperate in risky tasks. So pretty much they trust each other more. And considering that these consortships can be highly risky because males that are consorting a female can be attacked by opposing alliance, and very often these fights can end up in pretty severe injuries. It could be that males simply prefer to cooperate with the males that they are familiar with. It is known that in certain species, social bonds do positively influence longevity, infant survival, and also benefit the immune system. So it is known that social bonds do positively influence an individual's fitness, which could also explain why actually we see cooperation in so many different species, and why sociality and also complex societies might have evolved in the first place. This kind of non-kin cooperation that we observe in dolphins is a feature of complex terrestrial and marine societies, while very often in other societies where individuals do not have these differentiated social bonds, cooperation is much more often based on kinship. With that, I would like to thank you for listening, and in case you have any questions about my research, or if you would like to know more about the Dolphin Alliance project in Shark Bay, feel free to visit the website or write me an email.